Well, welcome back to another episode from Tailors with Love. Today, we are talking about The Talented Mr. Ripley from 1999, directed by Anthony Minghella, based on the book, a 1955 psychological thriller by Patricia Highsmith. The costume designer for this film was Anne Roth and Gary Jones, nominated for the Best Oscar Awards in 2000, but lost out to Lindy Hemming for Topsy Turvy. Rotten Tomatoes has this at 83% with the critics, 80% with the audience. And here to talk about this today is special guest Carl Barbeau from Easy Smiles and Expensive Watches. How are you doing today, Carl?
I'm doing well, Pete. Thanks for having me back. These are always fun.
Great to have you on, mate. What are you wearing, darling?
I'm actually, I'm wearing work clothes today. So I work in the beer industry. I've got my Sierra Nevada brewery shirt on today. So
nice.
It's a little bit more functional than I typically am for our meetups, but I thought about wearing a black turtleneck today, like Tom Ripley, but it's 95 degrees outside. That's not going to happen. I'm committed, but not that committed.
Just sitting there in a moat of sweat.
I could have done the lime green Speedo, but nobody wants to see that.
Yeah. No, that's just for the patrons.
Yeah. That's on my OnlyFans. Check it out.
Let's crack on. Talented Mr. Ripley. Carl, initial thoughts. You watched this the other night. You returned to it. Was it the first time you've seen it or second? How many times have you seen this film?
This was a movie I kind of came to a little bit late in the game. I don't know why it wasn't on my radar before. So I saw it for the first time like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I loved it. And that's one of the reasons why I suggested it to you, because it's just such a slick looking, stylish movie. It almost evokes like those classic Hitchcock thrillers. So this was probably the third time I've seen it, because I never watched it, before a handful of years ago.
Yeah, it actually looks brand new.
It does.
I saw it when it first came out. I wanted to get into both the Jude Law character, Dickie Greenleaf, and the Tom Ripley character played by Matt Damon, and maybe just flesh out some of their wardrobe choices and what distinguishes the two. And I think what's interesting is that the very first scene almost has a very big sartorial moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole film, the plot of the entire film is set in motion by a jacket. And he even says in the opening monologue, it all started with borrowing a jacket. So that's right. This whole movie, the theme of it is playing dress up.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. So he's borrowed I guess that's a Princeton jacket to play this piano recital. And then Herbert Greenleaf flags him and goes, "Hey, you might know my son, Princeton, blah, 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 blah," make that connection. And he doesn't hesitate, does he, Matt Damon? He goes, "How is Dickie?" He's like, he sees the opportunity here straight away, doesn't he?
It's almost like he's a practiced con man. This is not his first con.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that sets this apart from the book, I said to Carl,
some of us read and like to talk about how smart we are.
Looks like we got a reader. So in the book, it kind of sets up this. He's very desperate because he's already done quite a few cons. In fact, he's about to get caught, or he thinks he's about to get caught, and he needs a very swift get out. And it doesn't really go into that in the film. In the film, he's already just, he's working as a toilet attendant. He can play the piano, but it looks like he just needs a better life for himself, and that's why he's grabbed this one. I mean, he said that he's a forger. He can do signatures and impersonations, but it didn't allude to the fact that he is basically a very, very good confidence trickster. And I think if there was one critique of the film, I'd say it doesn't give you enough of a backdrop to him before he goes to Italy to chase down Dickie. But plenty of other stuff, plenty of other good takeaways. So let's. So he's Matt Damon. He's convinced Herbert that he's the guy to go and get Dickie back, even bring Jude Law back to America from his wallows in Italy. And on the docks before he goes, he's wearing this kind of really shabby, shapeless corduroy blazer. That kind of signifies like old head on young shoulders, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's even a line later on in the movie about a corduroy blazer in Italy. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And it brought to me No Time to Die, because we're going to see James Bond wear corduroy in Italy quite a bit. in a couple of months. So I don't know what Freddie would say about Daniel Craig's sartorial choices, but he doesn't approve of Ripley wearing corduroy.
I did. Yeah, I didn't even make that leap. That's a great one. So that's
as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, Daniel Craig wears corduroy in Italy.
Well, that was quite a strange thing when it came out as well. I mean, I think we've all become a little climatized to the Massimo Alba sleep suit now. We've, at first we were like, wait, hey, wait, button down denim shirts, whatever it might be. That kind of pinwheel corduroy. It wasn't something that we're used to seeing on Bond, but I think everyone's now become a little bit more into it. Would you say?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we've had 2 years to absorb the idea of what Craig is wearing. So now we're so used to seeing it that it just makes sense naturally.
Yeah. But it's a nice moment in the film because it's just after he's been sprung, isn't it? So he's playing like this little dress-up game in front of the mirror. He's doing like some kind of little dance number or a little thing to himself, and he gets caught out by Jude Law, and he goes, "What the fuck is going on here?"
That's another important dress-up moment in terms of the plot, because that's the moment where Dickie Greenleaf realizes that like something's wrong about this guy. He's a con man. He's playing dress up, and now quite literally he's dressing up as someone else, and that's the moment when it clicks that maybe I shouldn't trust this Ripley guy after all.
It is. This is the real moment the film hinges on, where he just kind of divorces him. Like Dickie is a guy that likes to have a flavor of the month type person, type band, type club, whatever it might be. He's very impetuous, isn't he? Kind of goes from one thing to another. And this is the moment where he just looks at Tom and just goes, "Oh, well, this isn't really going the way I thought it would be." But yeah, he's fuming at this point. And it's quite interesting that he now just abandons him and says, right, now I'm going to hang out with Freddie a bit more. And there's that jealousy that creeps in with Tom, that he's now lost him to Freddie.
Yeah, I think it's at that moment he realizes that Tom's whole persona is an affect. I mean, he takes on whatever he's wearing. He doesn't have any personality of his own. And Freddie is, for all of his faults, he is an authentic guy, whereas Tom isn't. And that's why I think Dickie starts to move over to Freddie as opposed to Tom.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It does that in a way more in the. Well, hold on a moment. You'd think that maybe when he invites himself into the bathtub, that would be the moment.
That's all Tom.
I just thought. So they're kind of playing chess by the bathtub, and he goes, "Hey, maybe I should get in there." Rog, leave it be. Sorry. And then straight after that, Rog, knock it off. Sorry. He's checking him out in the mirror, isn't he? So he does like the naked butt thing in the mirror, and then he flirts his towel and flips his towel as if to shoo him away, shoo his eyes away, as it were. I think Dickie leads him on a little bit down this road. Do you think?
Quite a bit, and I'm not sure why, but it could just be because of vanity. Dickie is a very vain man, and he probably enjoys being admired. Yeah. And Tom's a bit of a rube, and Dickie can manipulate him.
Yeah. It's a very interesting blend, this bit, because it's not really discussed in the film if he's gay or not. It's clearly implied by the way that he looks and admires, and he's in awe of Dickie. Mm-hmm. And then later on, he has a relationship-ish with Peter, or the kiss, as it were. But in the book, it's very much addressed. So at that moment, when he's trying on the clothes and Dickie finds him out, that's when he confronts him with this and just goes, "Hey, I'm not queer." And then Tom gets on the defense and goes, "Hey, I'm not queer either. It's like to have baths with grown men and sleep on the train. How dare you accuse me of that?" So
I get the impression that that Tom will get into bed with anybody as long as it is good for Tom.
Yeah, that's right. And it's because he's got nothing at the start of this. He's got no life. I mean, he's got a cruddy job. He doesn't even like himself. Really.
Right. He has no unique identity of his own. That's why he takes on Dickie's, and he takes on his surroundings. He takes on the persona of a Princeton student.
Yeah. It's a gorgeously set film in terms of I really miss traveling when I watch this film. There's
Yeah.
few films that I watch, I go, oh, fucking hell, I can't even book a holiday next week. You know, I'm going nowhere. But had you ever been to any of these places before? Like, well,
I haven't. The only place in Italy I've been is Rome.
right.
Well, and I guess they do go to Rome in the film. So I've been to Rome, but I have not been. I haven't been to the coast, where most of the film is set. I haven't been to Venice either, but I've spent a little bit of time in Rome.
Yeah. In they go to the Danieli as well in the book, so that's another Bond connection. So
That's right.
from
That's right.
Moonraker. So
Very cool.
the Danieli, by the way, are not interested in having anyone come into their hotel to have a look around. You can't. I tried when I was there. I said, "Hey, I just suppose I can have a little mooch around." They go, "No, no, signore."
That's a shame.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I got some bits of trivia from IMDb, which I always like to lash out. There's
Let's have it.
let's go for it. Make sure I've got the right page. So Dickie's favorite men's tailor in Rome, the Battistoni, is a real tailoring shop founded in 1946. It is housed in the inner court of Via Condotti. That's pretty cool.
It is.
These are some of the locations I'd actually want to pick out if I was going to Rome. You know, some of these old classic tailors, right?
And that's another plot point when he begins impersonating Dickie after he's murdered him. Spoiler. The first thing he does is go to a tailor. So he's very aware that the clothes make the man, and he needs to start taking on Dickie's persona from the outside in.
Yeah, and he really does get to like love the clothes, and there's almost that sorrowful moment when he has to go back and revert to being Tom.
Right.
When it's just too risky for him to be Dickie anymore. And that scene where he kind of cuts away in the piano reflection, and like that, there's like two heads that part. He has to put the glasses on, and then you see him back in that blazer, and it's like, oh, that's a real sore for a moment. And there's a really nice line actually in the book. Hey, look, I fucking read the book. It's a good book, by the way. I got through it in a couple of days.
I'll put it on my agenda as soon as I finish the Fleming reading challenge.
Yeah. What's up next on the Fleming reading challenge?
Majesties, which is one of my favorites.
That is a great one. That's for me one of the closest ones to the films. I would say.
Yes, it is.
Kind of like a blow by blow. Anyway, the moment in the book where it says he loved to pack. This is Tom. Sometimes he would take a day or two doing it. He loved seeing Dickie's clothes affectionately into suitcases, now and then trying on a shirt, a jacket in front of the mirror, buttoning a blue and white seahorse patterned sports shirt of Dickie's that he'd never worn. And he hated going back to being Thomas Ripley, hated going back to himself, as he would have hated putting on a shabby suit of clothes, a grease-spotted, unpressed suit of clothes that had not been very good, even when they were new. Which kind of really just, that's my old identity. And no one likes going in. I mean, who wants to put on old suits once they've had new suits, right? So.
And it's almost a metaphor for the characters, because Tom didn't look good even when he was new. Dickie is very pressed and polished and elegant.
Yeah, he looks good in this. This is one of my favorite Jude Law's films. Wasn't 100% sure on the accent. I think he's done better American accents. I'm sure he did a better one in Cold Mountain. It's not a terrible American accent. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me.
I mean, he sounds almost like transatlantic. I think he's trying to go for like Cary Grant in To Catch a Thief, that type of thing. So it's a transatlantic accent. I wouldn't say it's authentically New England or New York.
Right. Maybe a traveled man that's picked up a bit of a London twang.
There you go. And it is a different era, and he was educated at Princeton, so he should speak a little bit more regally, I guess, than New York.
Yeah. A quick note on Gwyneth Paltrow. I think she's really good in this as well.
Yes. Probably my favorite performance of hers, either this or Seven.
Yes. Oh, poor girl. And she's the only one. I felt so sorry for her at the end. Spoilers, when she's really got onto who Tom is. She's really. I mean, she's the only one, I guess, apart from Freddie. No, that's not right, because Freddie does see through him as well. He sees Tom as being the leech. He sees Tom as being the charlatan amongst the group. because he's got no time for fools and he's got no time for squares, and you can see him exactly who he is as Tom. And gradually, Gwyneth's character Marge gets to see him as the killer.
Mhm.
So I think that's it's so sad. She gets dragged off the dock there, screaming, like hitting him. I know you did it. And then you got the guy who was in Meet the Fockers, just saying, "Oh, come on, Marge."
There are a lot of victims in this movie that you feel bad for. I don't particularly feel too bad about Dickie Greenleaf, but I feel bad for Marge. I feel bad for Peter. These are people that really were just innocent bystanders in Tom and Dickie's game.
That's true. I mean, yeah. I mean, Dickie's a fascinating character to watch. He wasn't necessarily likable because
he's not the good guy. He isn't.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long do you go through a film like this cheering for the bad guy? I mean, do you want Tom to succeed or do you want him to get caught?
Well, I think you really want him to keep, because his whole persona is a lie from minute one, and you're with him on the very first lie. Even when he gets to Italy and he meets Kate Blanchett, he's already assumed a different identity. Sure. So you feel like if he gets sprung even 2/3 in the film, it's like, oh, fuck me. Sorry, I've been lying about all of this. You go, oh, God, no one likes to see that. No one wants to see that. Yeah.
It'd be a short, boring movie if that was the case.
Exactly, yeah. Just got sprung halfway in. Yeah. So I think you're right, though. It's a weird thing when you're cheering and rooting for the anti-hero. He's not really an anti-hero. He's just an out-and-out.
He's the bad guy.
Bastard. He is, isn't
but
he?
There's something compelling about watching him, and you do root for him for quite a while.
I think it's because you see him commit his first murder out of passion, and like it's not premeditated like it is in the book. That's the last time, I promise. Well, we should have done like a drinking game for this. So you forgive him almost for killing Dickie. Oh, look, he's really winding him up. No one likes to be called boring or dull, so he's fucking lashed out, bless him. But so you kind of with him all the way through that, and and then let's jump into the end. Poor old Peter. I mean, Peter's a guy who comes into the film, but then starts to love Tom for Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment when Tom,
or at least who he thinks Tom is.
Yeah, the kind of perception of Tom, as it were. And then it's sad when Tom has to kill him, because you feel like, well, now he has to go back to being Dickie, whereas he had a chance. He had a small window at liking himself as Tom and living a life out as Tom. And it's really well done, because you get the idea he's thrown him overboard because he's just wearing a long raincoat or a pea coat, as it were, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you know what's happened to poor old Peter.
Just another man overboard. Poor old Jack Davenport.
Yeah, he's gone.
At one time, I thought he would have made a good James Bond.
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of this sitcom that he was on back in the early 2000s called Coupling. And that's right around the time when Pierce Brosnan was winding down. Like, this Jack Davenport guy, he could be Bond. And then he sort of was in the first Kingsman.
Right, yeah, he had a little cameo as a kung fu assassin almost, wasn't it? But in a nice kind of tweed suit or whatever it was. But yeah, I remember seeing that and going, oh yeah, this guy's got it. And then he gets killed.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah, never mind. Well, I think I don't know if you had anything else. I think I've rummaged through all my notes. I've read the book.
We know.
Yeah. Was it? Oh, I might have had one more bit of IMDb trivia. The store Ripley visits to have his wallet embossed with Dickie's initials is the Gucci boutique on Via Condotti. So that's official. Some nice locations to go and find in Rome, I think, and other places. The Spanish Steps. The Spanish Steps. Oh, that's terrific. I know this, but they had every year they have to get it sand washed because it kind of comes up black, like naturally through the air. So all the brands that are surrounding the Spanish Steps all take it in turns to get it washed. So you got like the likes of Swarovski or Louis Vuitton and all the big kind of powerhouses. Oh, it's your turn. I'm like, oh fuck.
Interesting.
Like 30 grand.
I'm sure they can afford it.
Yeah. It's not too much of a dent. in the petty cash. Well, Kyle, thanks for joining me on this one, mate. Really
It was a
enjoyed
lot of
watching
fun.
this film.
It was a great film. I really enjoyed watching it again.
Yeah, no, definitely. And until next time.